So, I'm Jeffrey Sanders.
I'm Rodolfo Facundo.
And I'm Tima Omie-Abbey.
And we're all from Professor Store's University's Physics 1 class, and we are here with
Professor Minus.
And we just want to ask you a few questions, just about your educational background pertaining to like why did you, indulge yourself in physics and sciences and stuff like that. Just, just some basic questions like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So, to start off, we just want to know just state your name, position, and the amount of time you've been working at Prairie View.
All right, so I am Matthew Minus. I just took an assistant professor position here, and this is actually my first semester, first year.
Okay.
That's a question.
What's your educational background?
So for me, I started off actually at Texas Southern University, majoring in chemistry. I thought I wanted to do pharmacy.
Yeah.
And then I actually worked as a pharmacy technician, and I hated it. So from there, I was like, well, I don't want to pass out drugs. I want to be a person that makes them. Who makes them? And they're like, oh, it's a chemist. I'm like, oh, I already majored in chemistry.
Yeah.
So at that point, I knew I wanted to go back to graduate school, but it was already pretty much the last semester of my senior year. So I graduated. I did alternative certification for teaching, taught for 2 years, and then during that second year, I took the GRE and basically applied to grad school, and I got in at U of H. And then I applied to Rice. I called Rice and I said, well, U of H accepted me, so if y'all gonna make an offer. And then like about a couple days later, they made me an offer. So I went to Rice, and I did the PhD, and then from there, you have to do something called a postdoc, where you're just boosting your resume, and I did that at UT Austin. I tried to stay in Texas because I have a son here,
Yeah.
and so.
Family first.
Yeah, right, exactly. Science is good, it's not that good,
Right.
So from there, I actually saw the position open in the Prairie View, and I know what the institution's about. I know the culture, and to me, it was like, all right, go take that position if it's there. You know what I mean? And so interviewed, and then the rest is history.
What's your current specialization and research area?
So there's what I was hired for, which is analytical chemistry, which is that's more of basically when I was a postdoc, we had the sense. Are y'all familiar with like handedness at all?
Handedness.
Like of chemistry, of chemicals.
Oh.
So basically, like some chemicals have a right-handed form and a left-handed form. And the right-handed form will save your life. The left-handed form will kill you. Right, and so I had to build sensors that can sense the molecular form. Right, is it the right hand or is it the left hand? Right, and they'll use it down the road to see like whether it will kill you or not. Right, and that was sort of the project there, and it was analytical, so to speak. But at Rice, the project was more. I was actually going in and building drugs, and they would give it to the mice and see if the cancer cells died. Right, and so that was much more medicinal chemistry and thinking about interaction with biology, right? So here, I do a little bit of both, right? And then I also, towards the end of the postdoc, got to do some materials chemistry. So, and that's basically making like, you hear they all talking about space-age polymers or, this, that, and the other, but that all happens from a chemist, basically. You start off with the chemist and they make some new molecule, a new form, and then maybe a physicist will go in and test the properties. And an engineer will go and start building with it, right? And so it was one of those things. So that's something I'm trying to do here, and we're trying to think about making polymers basically that you can recycle, right? And not just like burn it. Like right now we burn it or we shred it, but we don't recycle at the molecular level, right? And so basically you could potentially think of like molecules get together and form these plastics, but then when you want to break them down, you break them down all the way at the molecular level, so you could reuse them easily. Because if you shred plastic, they call it like secondary plastic, it doesn't have the strength anymore. So you can only use it for like trash bags.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the little weak ones, HEB, like those, right? But if you could do it at the molecular level, you can reuse it infinitely with all the properties, right? So that's the hope and dream.
What motivated you to become a scientist?
I say you pretty much, you almost go with what interests you, and then within that you do what you're good at. You know what I mean? And so it's like if you like, oh, I sort of like this math thing, and then within that you're like, I sort of like it when it's applied to physics. You might do physics, right? Or if you're like, oh, I sort of like, for me, organic chemistry. It was the hardest class I ever took off the bat. It was the first C I got in college, but it also motivated me because towards the end I was like, I really failed the first 3 tests.
Yeah.
And at the end, it started to click slowly. And then by the second semester, I was getting an A. A lot of it started to make a lot of sense to me. And that's what sort of grew my interest, is like, wait, you mean we can build the universe? Like, you know, like one molecule at a time? And it's like, yeah, you can. So that became interesting to me, and I had the ability to do it. And if you have abilities, you find niches that you can do that other people can't do, right? And if you can find that and do it, just go do it, right?
Right. Okay. What are the highest aspirations for the students they teach?
Students here?
I think yes, students here.
Okay.
You know, wherever.
In general, okay.
In general.
So I think for me, I want my students to be happy, right? And so it's like that means whatever they want to do. So here I'm teaching the nurses this semester, and so my highest aspiration to them is that they become RNs, right? Like they get what they want out of that, right? And I think that if a student says, you know what, I want to make a lot of money, I'll tell them, you know, get engineering, go get in computers, you know, right? Like if a student says I want to explore the universe, I'm like, okay, you want to be a researcher, right? Like, it's two different, it's different focal points, right? And so, but at the end, to me, the ultimate goal for all the students is happiness, right? Happiness and edification of the mind, right? You want to build up your skill set mentally because it's going to change the way you view the world, and that helps you become happy long term.
What is your specific scientific training impact the way that you think and see the world, or how?
Right. I guess that led into the next question, right?
Right.
I think that so as a scientist, you really learn that you make assumptions, right? And the most dangerous thing is the assumptions you don't know you already made, right? And so what you learn to do within your world and your grasp is to stop making assumptions about what you can and can't do, and start living in what's actual real, right? So you might say, oh, I never had this much money, or I never had this and this. And that's an assumption. There's nothing factual about it, right? And so you learn the power of the assumptions that you grasp onto. They keep you from ever having your breakthroughs in research and in life, right? And so it's like you learn, okay, if I'm making this assumption that this will never happen, what's the scientific data behind it? And if there isn't, you acknowledge the possibility. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but you learn to acknowledge possibilities that are sort of beyond what you know, right? Instead of assuming you know everything and it's never going to happen. Right, exactly. And I think that has been the biggest impact in my life, is that, you know, as you do the research and you break down your own assumptions and you get rid of them, the research starts to work. And it's the same thing in life, in that as you break down and get rid of these assumptions of what you can do, what you can't do, what you'll never do, all of a sudden you'll look up and things start turning in your life that you never thought was going to turn, right? And so it's one of those things that I think that has been the most powerful impact of practicing science for me.
Okay. What is your ideal dream as a scientist?
Ideal dream as a scientist?
Anything you want to pursue? Or?
Yeah. So for me, I think it's gonna sound terrible, but the money, right? Like,
right.
It's not as much the money for me, you know what I mean? Like, there's only so much money one person needs, but you want to be in a position where you can have enough money to impact the world in a positive way, right? And if, you know, after the first couple of minutes, like, I'm good, you know what I mean? Like, but everyone else, you know, like, what can you do to help the people around you, to help the world around you, right? From that level. And there's possibilities in science to sort of get those things going. One is you have to know the science, and then two is you have to learn finance. Like, you have to learn investing, you have to learn companies, you have to learn what does it mean to be a CFO and CEO, what is an endowment fund, you know what I mean? Like, you have to go in and really learn, all right, let's say you do get the money, how do you manage it, right? And then to get your startup funds, a lot of times you can get the government to start up a company for you, basically, because they'll give you $1 million, $2 million to work on the material. You can patent the material and start your company from the $1 million or $2 million that they gave you, right? So really all your startup costs, and by the way, research itself is $1 million a year license. Wow. Right, so the university here has to pay $1 million a year just to even be able to do research, right? So we're parlaying, as professors, we have a chance to parlay all the money they've already put into the situation, right? Bring some money in from the government, and it allows you to start up your own technology. And that gives you the opportunity to then license that out to other companies, and that's where basically the long-term money is. And so what you see around a lot of these schools is you see these startup cultures coming from the university, because basically the government is funding the next technology, and you have an opportunity to own that. Now, if you go in the industry, they pay you up front, but you own nothing. All the research is theirs. Okay. Matter of fact, you can't even talk to your wife about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's that deep, right? Like, they have non-proprietary, so you have to be mindful of like what do you want to do, right? And it's not that there's a wrong way or a right way. Yeah. It's just what do you want to own your stuff, or would you rather work on it and just be good? Like, you don't have to worry about how successful you are because you're still gonna get a check, or you get a little bit less but you have way more freedom, and you have the option to sort of grow infinitely.
Okay. So with all that being said, are there any final words to encourage students who are maybe viewing this video?
I would just say, figure out what it is that you really want, and make plans to go for it. Right? I mean, that's the easiest way to get to that path. Right? Like, what do you want to do? What type of life do you want? And then what can get you there? And you might have 5 to 6 different options that can get you there. And then you basically figure out, okay, it's the easiest, number 1, number 2, and just work your way back, right? And then beyond that, I had a coach that used to say, I used to play football at TSU, and the coach told me, he said, okay, you start with what's the worst thing that could happen, right? And if you stop that, then you work backwards, all right? So when you're planning and you're executing a plan, you have to say, instead of saying, most people say, it's going to work. They just try to psych themselves up with determination. Right. You have to say, okay, as I'm doing this, what's the worst thing that could happen? Yeah. All right? And if I can shut that off, then no matter what, I'll be okay. You know what I mean? Because usually, once you get past the worst thing, everything else starts to like, all right, well, worst case scenario, I'll waste a year, I'll do this, but it won't be the life-ending or career-ending type of thing.
Appreciate what you had to say.
Yeah, definitely. Let me shake you guys' hands.
Thanks for taking your time out.
Yes.
Thank you for the interview.
All right.